Hola. So we're halfway through, and I'm going to change strategy now. We have a lot of material there, and there's no time to cover it all, but I know the priorities. And that is the teachings that I'm sharing with you that actually can liberate your mind and really address mental afflictions and cut them and decrease all of the, how do we say, misery that comes out of mental afflictions. It's not from physics. Physics wasn't designed to cut through mental afflictions. It's all from Buddhism. And Buddha Dharma, from the beginning, was designed to do exactly that. But I include the physics, which I've been studying now for 35 years, following in the footsteps of my teacher, my root Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama. I've been listening to him a lot, and wherever he's going in the world, speaking Tibetans or Japanese or anybody else, he starts talking about Madhyamaka, and then he goes into quantum mechanics. Speaking in Tibetan to Tibetans, he goes. And so he's doing this, I believe, and I'm not going to elaborate here, but he knows that by and large, the education people are getting in the modern world, in Singapore, Rio de Janeiro, everywhere, almost all the science they're getting is materialistic, and metaphysical realism is virtually never challenged. So that's what your kids are getting. When they learn science, which is supposed to be truth, they never question materialism, almost nobody, and they never question materialism and metaphysical realism. And yet, if you look at the sources I've given you, which are all impeccable, materialism is just torpedoed by the physicists themselves who know more about matter than anybody else, and metaphysical realism is dead as a dodo. But this doesn't get covered in the media. Look at the BBC, Guardian, Times. Where are they talking about quantum cosmology? Where are they challenging the standard paradigm of there's a real physical world out there? And when do they ever challenge materialism? The press just basically never does it. And this means your kids are getting a science education, learning about the nature of reality that is entirely materialistic and embedded in metaphysical realism, which was really good if you're still in the 19th century. But they're not getting it. It's a very tiny portion of physicists who are even learning about the incredibly cool things I'm sharing with you, and it took me 35 years to put those together. If I were teaching Tibetans, which I have done, I never talk about physics. I don't touch it with a 10-foot pole because they haven't been touched by the materialism and all that crap. So when I'm teaching Tibetan nuns, man, is it easy. I've done it twice in Tibetan. I just teach them Dharma. They're just lapping it in. Because they don't need to know about physics and all that stuff. Their minds are uncluttered. Give them Dharma, they take Dharma, and they're set. But we've all been educated. If we've had a science education or not, at least we read the media. And so, what I'll be doing from now on is we have a lot of notes on physics, and I'm not going to talk about any of it. It's there, it's clear, and you can read it. If you have any questions, it's brilliant stuff. It's incredibly brilliant stuff by some of the top physicists in the modern world. And if you can understand it, that's great. If you don't care, that's no problem. And if you have questions, you can ask me. But I'm not going to give any more commentary on the physics. So tomorrow, we'll cover Chittamatra and Madhyamaka in one day. To focusing on what I said I would do at the very beginning, 90% of what I'm going to talk about is developing dream yoga in the daytime. And you can't do that unless you're fundamentally questioning your very way of viewing reality altogether. So I'd be interested to have a conversation. I wish we had more time because I'd love to just have some time to chat with Charlie. He's just immersing himself in this brilliant field of lucid dreaming and dream yoga. What I can say from what I know, long friendship with Stephen LeBears, is that in the lucid dreaming literature and the way of teaching and research being done, Stephen never seriously challenged materialism, and he never ever challenged metaphysical realism. It was all about becoming lucid in a dream, but then you wake up, oh, I'm not dreaming. Okay, business as usual. And so we had coming to his workshops, which were very expensive, by the way, and people had come from all over the world because he's really an outstanding teacher. And many of them were having lucid dreams very, very frequently. I saw no evidence that having however many lucid dreams they're having, that it was actually decreasing a sense of ego, or anger, or craving, or hedonism, or consumerism, or materialism. I saw no evidence at all. They were just having really interesting experiences, like going to a special cinema every night, and having really cool lucid dreams. I think that's very cool. But that's not what Buddha Dharma is about, to have cool experiences. If you'd like to save yourself the time of developing the hard work of lucid dreaming, just wait a little bit and you can buy it. It's called virtual reality. If you want to escape from reality and go into a virtual realm and have lots of fun, skiing trips, sex, killing people, whatever you enjoy. It's just going to get realer and realer and realer, and you can buy it, you know? And lucid dreaming is a video game without the technology. It's virtual reality without the technology. It's a lot harder, but it's the same thing. You're entering into a realm that when you wake up, you look back and say, that wasn't real, but now, oh gee, I have to go to work. The same old mental afflictions come up. It's the same old, same old. So I'm just not here as an entertainer, and I'm here only to pass on Buddhist teachings which are rooted in compassion. But I know that my passions aren't the same as everybody else's. And so I enjoy talking about the physics, but it's there for you to read. And so tomorrow I'll tell you what's coming. And then if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. At least I'm going to stay, because I'm really interested in the material. Tomorrow we're going to cover two big ones, enormous ones, that people will study for 4 years, 8 years, you know, in monasteries. Mind only. Well, we cracked it open a bit. We'll spend a bit more time tomorrow. But it fundamentally challenges metaphysical realism altogether. And then, as His Holiness commented, when he's talking about mind only, he said, if you start viewing reality that way, that everything that exists consists only of appearances to your mind, there's nothing outside of that, and of course we have collective karma, so there's a lot of intersubjective corroboration. But what accounts for the conceptuality, the consensuality, the commonality of our experiences is not some molecules and fields and waves out there. It's collective karma. All the burden of the consensual reality is on the mind and substrate consciousness, and the entanglement of everyone's substrate consciousness is there's a lot of shared. So he said, if you've really fathomed Chittamatra and you're viewing reality in that way, that's going to be really a massive blow to your mental afflictions. Because you want to point your finger out, you make me so unhappy. You're just pointing to appearances in your own mind. That's all that's making you unhappy is appearances in your own mind. So improve your own mind. Don't try to fix other people. It's your own mind. Everything is your own mind. You see, you make me so happy. That's an appearance of your own mind. So just develop your own mind. And you get over it. So I keep on going back to materialism. I'm not going to now, and I'll hardly touch it from now on. But if materialism is correct, all of Buddha Dharma is wrong. I mean, Buddha was having a hallucination, psychotic fit on the night of his enlightenment. I mean, there's just no way of saying it other than the true way. If reincarnation is wrong, his first insight was wrong, and all of the rest of them were wrong. The 12 links to dependent origination, the 6 realms of samsara, reincarnation, karma, is all just hocus pocus mumbo jumbo. And then you get secular Buddhism, was basically just as one more school of psychotherapy with a bit of mindfulness, a bit of loving kindness, and have a nice day. And remain a materialist and a hedonist and a consumer-driven planet destroyer. And so, that's why, if you just look at Sautrantika, if you fathom Sautrantika, classic physics, you see materialism doesn't stand a chance. It demolishes materialism. And it has a theory of consciousness that really makes sense. It's totally coherent logic, and you can test it, whereas not a single materialistic theory of consciousness can be tested. It's just opinions. So Sautrantika is brilliant, and it's still metaphysical realism. But then we go into Chittamatra and Madhyamaka, and then we'll go into Vajrayana and Dzogchen. And if metaphysical realism is correct, if there's a real physical world out there, then all of Mahayana is wrong. Chittamatra is wrong, Madhyamaka is wrong, Vajrayana is just playtime. Let's pretend that I'm Manjushri and you're Tara. You want to play? It's just fun and games. You're just pretending something that's not true, but it feels really good. And then Mahamudra and Dzogchen are just a joke. So I know a number of people who really have never questioned their materialistic assumptions and think they're practicing Vipassana, they think they're practicing Mahamudra and Dzogchen and Vajrayana, and it's just a joke. Because it's a little playtime on top of unquestioned assumptions about materialism, or at the very least unquestioned assumptions about metaphysical realism. And His Holiness said, if you're still grasping to the inherent existence of the objective world, all of Vajrayana is nothing. It's just pretending. And so we're going to have one day for Chittamatra and Madhyamaka. Chittamatra demolishes some fundamental assumptions of metaphysical realism that remain unquestioned in Sautrantika. And then Madhyamaka comes and deals a death blow to the reification of the mind. Of consciousness itself, consciousness also doesn't exist by its own inherent nature. So Chittamatra knocks out an objectively inherently existent physical world. Madhyamaka comes and returns the punch right into the subjective mind to show this too has no more inherent nature than some external physical world. And then on that basis, when you've realized emptiness of all phenomena, as in the Heart Sutra, then you have the cognitive basis for entering into Vajrayana. And Vajrayana then is the foundation for Mahamudra Dzogchen. So what we'll do then here, so then you can see whether you want to stay. And that is tomorrow, Chittamatra Madhyamaka. There's a lot of interesting notes from physics. If you don't like it, don't read it. If you like it, read it. You don't understand it, ask me. Because I've spent 35 years trying to understand that stuff, and I think I do. But if you're not interested, I'll keep my own interest to myself. And then, so that's tomorrow. Chittamatra Madhyamaka, primary emphasis on daytime dream yoga. Many of you received teachings on the 7-point mind training. You remember after he goes right into teachings on emptiness of the mind, and your meditative equipoise, realizing emptiness, and he's just about to segue over into relative bodhicitta. Do you remember the line in between? That's the line in between. Chulam milam taburta. View phenomena as being like dreams. Right? Oh, and that's actually at the beginning, and it's Tunsam Gyume Keburja. I switched them. At the very beginning of the teachings on emptiness, it's view all phenomena as being dreamlike. That's the beginning, and then he plunges into the depths of the emptiness of the nature of the mind itself. It's brilliant. And then when he comes to an end, then he says, Tunsam Gyume Keburja. In between sessions, view yourself as an illusory being. In other words, dreamlike, as if you were a character in a dream, appearing but not really there. This is a fundamental revolution in the way you view yourself and the whole of reality. We'll have one day for that. Okay? And then we'll go into explicit dream yoga teachings, from natural liberation especially, which is all couched within Dzogchen. We'll look at those, and within the context of Vajrayana. We'll look at those daytime and nighttime, and Vajrayana, and then Monday. If your mind isn't blown yet, then Monday should do it. Because on Monday, we're going to go into Dzogchen. It's going to be straight Dzogchen, and we've just gone beyond physics altogether. Although there's some physics that kind of looks interesting. Read it on the side, and the margins read the physics. But of course, they can't test anything they're saying. When you go into these really deep waters of physics, they can't test it because they don't know anything about consciousness. Whereas everything in Buddhism you can test. That's the thing. And so on Monday, final day, at the end of the day, I'd really like to see everybody come in with just necks and your head just blown all over the place. Not literally. But your mind. I don't want to blow your head, I want to blow your mind. Because I'm going to give away the plot. I could die tonight and I don't want you to miss the plot. And that is for all of Buddhism coming up to and not including Dzogchen. That's a lot of Buddhism. The first 8 yanas. We're saying even in Theravada, Shravakayana all the way through, phenomena are like a dream, like an illusion, like a mirage, like, right? It's everywhere, with different interpretations as you go from Theravada to Sautantaka to Chittamatra to Madhyamaka, like a dream, but not a dream, of course, because if you conflate the two, then you're psychotic. Then we get to Dzogchen. And in Dzogchen, the really authentic Dzogchen masters say, this is not like a dream. This is a dream. Now, have they fallen into psychosis? Oh, you poor Lama. You can't tell the difference between dream and waking state anymore. Come and give you a cuddle. No. They're saying from the perspective of Rigpa, from the perspective of pristine awareness, very subtle mind, from that perspective, this whole world here, the whole world, England and Wales and the Milky Way and everything else, from the perspective of Rigpa, this is a dream. And you're the dreamer. And your mind is the creator of the whole of the universe, of your universe. So we'll do that on Monday. And so I will comment on, because there are not many people who teach Chittamatra and Madhyamaka and then immediately apply it to practice. This can be very short, I'm almost finished, because I want to have a whole hour for discussion, so no meditation tonight. You meditate afterwards. But just a few days ago, I had the wonderful privilege of finally meeting an incarnation of Dujum Rinpoche. Because I spent 20 years translating the Dzogchen works of Dujum Lingpa from the 19th century, and that's my primary path. I'm just dedicating my whole life to that. But I didn't meet Dujum Rinpoche. the great Dujun Rinpoche, head of the Nyingma order. I never met him. But now we have his incarnation. And I've known about him, I've heard wonderful things about him. And then he was in Moscow a few days ago. Then I had the opportunity to, number one, meet with him. I spent a half an hour with him one-on-one, and then attend an empowerment with him. And it was wonderful. I'm very glad I did. Real blessing. And he really does seem to be a truly great Lama. Young and great, I think. Enormous potential what he can bring. And he's got quite a lineage. But I asked him a simple question that I've had in mind for a long time, and I've asked various people. Sitting right in front of him, one-on-one, and he's got my 3-volume set of the translations of all of his predecessors, Jizang Dzogchen, that I've translated, now being translated into Russian and Portuguese and Spanish and so forth. And I said, in these writings of Dujun Lingpa, these pure visions, it says unequivocally, I'm telling him what he already knows, but I'm setting up for question. It states so clearly, unequivocally, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that if you want to set out on the path of Dzogchen and reach the path and bring about irreversible deep transformation, purify your mind, become a Vidyadhara, and go on and achieve rainbow body, if you want to enter the path of Dzogchen, shamatha is absolutely indispensable. It's not debatable, it's unequivocal, you can't skip it. And you know that. I just quoted your material. And it appears to me, I asked him, it appears to me that hardly any Tibetans are really teaching it, or if they do, they teach it as, well, go ahead and do it for an hour a day. But it doesn't seem like they really mean it. It doesn't seem like they're teaching it very much. And it seems like it's being totally overlooked or marginalized. And I said, is that true? And if so, how come so many Tibetan lamas in this modern right now are skipping that indispensable phase of the practice that enables you actually to purify your mind irreversibly? How's that possible? And so that was my question. Well, a Lama who's living mostly in Tibet, so he knows the scene in Tibet, but he's traveling all over the world, spent time in India, Nepal, and so forth. So he knows outside, he knows inside Tibet. And I said, am I right, or am I missing something? And if I'm right, what's going on? That was my question. And he said, number one, you're right. Shamatha is absolutely indispensable, and that's fully achieving it, not just dabbling, doing an hour or two a day, and then getting on to the fun stuff, like Rigpa, Po, Chu. Shamatha is indispensable. You're right. You're exactly right. Of course, it says right there in the text, so many texts. But we have 2 types of Buddhists. We have Tibetan Buddhists, and then we have the Westerners. And Tibetan Buddhists really operate out of a lot of blind faith. They just have uncritical faith. Frankly, like so many Westerners, people all over the world have blind faith in materialism. They're just told everything materialistic. Okay, we believe it. I mean, that's all over the media. Show me the science writer in the BBC, Guardian, anywhere else. Show me the science writer that questions materialism. They'll probably lose their job. So we just accept it. That's what we're told, and that's what Tibetans do with Tibetan Buddhism. Said primarily that, it's blind faith is all over the place. And then, if you teach, and he knows he's teaching Tibetans in Tibet, that's where he primarily lives, and he said, if you teach Tibetans shamatha, they get bored. And if people are bored, they won't listen, and you may as well stop talking. And he didn't say it, but what also is true, if you teach Tibetans, you just sit down and say, here's Vipassana, and here's how you practice it. He said, what Tibetans like, they like damarus. They like bells, they like chanting, they like dancing, they like mantras, they like visualization, they like the razzmatazz. They like doing stuff. And they don't like just sitting there and watching their breath. Boring. Watching the mind, even more boring. Give me a damaru. Where's my damaru? Where's my damaru? Where's my vajra? I want to do something. And so we give them empowerments. We give them stuff they want to hear, otherwise they won't show up at all. The Dalai Lama said exactly the same thing. When I give an empowerment, 10,000 people come. When I give teachings, people come waiting for the empowerment. That's what he says. It's all over the place. And Westerners come to Dharma because they're unhappy. Does that ring a bell at all? Not because we want razzmatazz, but if the lamas come and give us razzmatazz, and the Lama says this is really powerful razzmatazz, jibby, 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 jib, jib, jib. We're reciting gobbledygook that we can't even understand. Repeat after the Lama. Jibby, 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 jib. And visualize that you're something really weird. And now you receive the imprints. And people come for the 100 for that. Teach them Madhyamaka, and I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I thought that was a wonderful explanation. I thought it really was wonderful. But if anyone here is actually interested in purifying the mind and reaching the path and bringing about irreversible transformation, then the shamatha is indispensable and the vipassana is indispensable, and without those two, nothing else works. Not Vajrayana, Mahayana, you name it, nothing else works. These are the core, the lifeblood that makes all the other ones work. The other ones are all skillful means to make this work. Having said that, again, I promise, I'm not going to give commentary in physics. There's too much anyway. But this is what we'll do from now. And by the time we get to the last 2 days, there will be more discussion of nighttime dream yoga. But I'm just not into the entertainment business. To talk in ways that people really enjoy. I've taken Tibetan medicine since 1971. You know what they've never done in all that time? Tibetan medicine tastes like dirt. Bitter dirt, sweet dirt, sour dirt, dirt, but only dirt. And you know what they've never done in 48 years? They've never tried to make it taste good. And so I'm eating dirt pills 3 times a day for decades now, and they just taste like dirt every single time. And I don't complain, because it really helps to maintain my health. So tomorrow we're going to have some Chittamatra dirt and some Madhyamaka dirt, and then we'll have some Vajrayana dirt, and then some sweets. On Monday, some really sweet Dzogchen. So there it is. So that's what we'll be doing, and I'll try to always relate it to practice, and hopefully there's benefit. I'll end on this point, and then we'll go to questions. There's plenty of them stacked up here. But it's been a year since I've really closely worked with Stephen LeBear. So there's never any breaking apart or anything, totally amicable. He's doing his thing, and I'm just doing my own thing. But if I could be just a miraculously effective lucid dream yoga teacher, and we just focus on that the whole time, just lucid dream, and I could be so fabulously effective that by the time we're finished, every one of you is having a lucid dream every single night. I think I'd be just flooded with fan mail. Alan, this is the greatest lucid dream yoga retreat I've ever attended. I'm having one every night. I can't thank you enough. 20 minutes a night, lucid dream. And you get back to the waking state. Do you think that's going to actually purify any of your kleshas? You've had a 20-minute video game. Interesting, perhaps potentially profound, but if you don't question the daytime reality, why do you think anything's going to change there? Because this is back to metaphysical realism. So, sleeping, dreaming, dying. I was chided today that I'm not teaching enough about sleeping, dreaming, and dying. Sleeping, it's dream and it's waking. I've talked at some length about lucid. Tomorrow we're going to go into awareness. If you'd like to be lucidly in dreamless sleep, the ticket is to get really familiar with consciousness, know consciousness, identify consciousness, dwell in consciousness. So tomorrow we're going to go right into shamatha, right on consciousness itself. It's a straight ticket to becoming lucid in deep dreamless sleep. And then in terms of becoming lucid in the dream state, the daytime practice that cannot be bested is becoming lucid with respect to your mind in the daytime. And that's taking the mind as a path. There's no better method, because you're doing exactly what you would be doing at night, but you can practice it for hours during the daytime and become lucid, and then you can transfer that over in the dream, become lucid in the dream, and there you are having a good day. Let's pause for a moment. I said I'd stop, but I'll just a tiny bit more, because it's important, and that is, why do Tibetans practice dream yoga? Lucid dreaming is all kind of motivations, including having dream sex, or it can be profoundly dharma. I'm certain that when Charlie teaches it, it's not for fun and games. He's bringing in dharma. He's making it all dharma. I have no question about that. I've heard him teach. He's a wonderful teacher. So if you bring dharma to it, then lucid dreaming can be profoundly dharma practice. And I'm sure he does a good job. I've heard him lecture. He's outstanding. But why do Tibetans practice it? It's been around for 1,000 years. Why are they practicing it primarily? And I can tell you, it's really to prepare you for the bardo. It's to prepare you for the bardo. After you're dead and you're in the bardo, you're going to be in a transitional phase that is extremely dreamlike. And if you're non-lucid, if you don't know what's going on, and you're just being tumbled through, like hurled through with like a whirlwind, and pummeled through by the winds of karma, through one experience after another in the bardo, this intermediate period, and you're not lucid, it doesn't mean that you're going to go to some bad realm or something. It just means that you'll have no freedom at all, any more than you have freedom in a non-lucid dream. In a non-lucid dream, you're responding to everything out of pure habit, and that's why there's no karma. You're just responding out of habit. Then you're not really making any decisions at all. To have a habitual knee-jerk Pavlovian response, that's not karma, that's not decision, that's just a reaction programmed by your habits. And so in a non-lucid dream, that's why the Buddha said you're not accruing any new karma, because you're not making any decisions. Not really. You maybe feel like you are, but you're not really, because it's all pushed by habit. And if you're non-lucid in the bardo, these are the teachings on sleeping, dreaming, and dying. If you're non-lucid in the bardo, maybe you'll have a really good rebirth. But whatever it is, it's just you're going to be pushed there, exactly as in a non-lucid dream. Whereas if in the bardo you can recognize the bardo as the bardo, become lucid in the bardo, you've taken the reins of the horse in your hands. And you can direct your consciousness exactly where you like, and you can make a wise choice. And what I'd strongly recommend is go to a Pure Land, for heaven's sakes. This planet Earth is not going to be that happy a place in 50 years unless we really turn things around, and there's no indication we are. Not the American, not the Australian, they're doing bad. Brazil's doing bad. China, they're the worst polluter on the planet. Russia, I don't know, not big hopes. And so we're not doing enough to really turn things around. So this planet's not going to be a very happy place from 50 years from now. Not a place I want to come back to. Better check out for a little while. And you can do that in the bardo, direct your attention, go wherever you like. So that's why Tibetans practice. Become a lucid in dream, and then to prepare yourself for becoming lucid in the bardo, and then be able to make wise choices. So that's a real reason for it. So sleeping, dreaming, and dying. Best way to prepare for dying is to learn how to die lucidly. We've covered that, but we'll cover it more tomorrow. If as you're dying, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from now, when you're actually dying, if you can release all attachment, all grasping to the environment, your body, and your mind, all of which is going to vanish, release all attachment, all grasping, and just rest in awareness, sleek, slim, and unencumbered. If you can rest there and maintain that flow of knowing, you'll cut through the dying process like a knife. Cut right through with no perturbation, no unhappiness, no freaking out, because it will be like being in a hurricane shelter where the wind. My brother went through this. He was in the Caribbean when it was 250-mile winds. It was Hurricane Andrew or something like that a long time ago. But it was like hell outside. But he was in the center of his house, in the bathroom, concrete walls. So he said it was terrifying, but all the danger was outside. And you are in this secure place, right? If you're resting in awareness, then what's going on outside may be terrifying and confusing and so forth. Stay inside, stay in awareness, die lucidly. You go right through to clear light of death. No problem. So the practice we'll do tomorrow will be the best preparation you can have for dying lucidly. Yeah. So hope that's helpful. So that's what we'll do, and now we go to question and answer. So that was instead of having a little meditation session. So lots and lots of this time. And I'll respond only to those that are directly relevant. Okay, I assume the following premise, that carbon-based life forms are a hardware interface for the substrate consciousness to become manifest. Good. Does it not stand to reason that we may be able to create an alternative form of hardware, carbon-based or not, to detect the substrate consciousness? Yes, that was easy. Good, very thoughtful. Excuse me. Let's see what else is coming up. Okay, I'm not going to talk about Kundalini because I haven't talked about it thus, so I'm not going to jump into a new area. We have enough to deal with. Is the quantum field a valid attempt to describe? No. Quantum field, Dharmakaya, different. Very, very different. As is the zero-point energy of the electromagnetic vacuum that I spent 2.5 years studying. It's not emptiness. It's just the energy of empty space. It's very different. Will you be instating vows before the end of the retreat? So someone has asked me to offer Bodhisattva precepts and refuge. Anybody who would like to, I can't say no, frankly. And so I will do that. And anybody who doesn't want to, that's perfectly fine. I'm doing it only because I was asked. But yeah, we'll do that on Monday. So one of the theories of reality today is quantum field theory, with the latest being discovered is the Higgs field. Do you think or believe could be a consciousness field yet to be discovered if all these fields were then unified? Would that be Rikpa? From Frank. Could there be a field of consciousness? Yeah, it's called Dharmakaya. That's a field, because Dharmakaya is coextensive with Dharmadhatu, and that's a field of consciousness. Yeah, so the answer is yes. Will physicists discover it? No, because they don't know anything about consciousness. They never were trained. So that's not putting down. I don't know anything about, so many things because I've never studied it. But in all of your physics training, you never learn anything about consciousness. So then they don't know. So they're not going to discover it, and they can't measure it. Can you meditate in a lucid dream and still get benefits? Absolutely, yes. Philopos. Where's Philopos? Is he here? He's back? But, there you are. Thank you. Excellent question. You always have good questions, Philopos. Can you meditate in a lucid dream and still get benefits? Absolutely, yes. And I'll give a tiny elaboration. Our waking state is relatively coarse relative to dreaming. It's a subtler continuum, and subtler means more powerful. So if you can meditate in a lucid dream, that's more powerful than meditating simply in an ordinary waking state. It's more powerful, more transformative. And then what's even subtler and therefore more powerful than even the dreaming consciousness is deep dreamless sleep. It's subtler. And if you can meditate there, without too much difficulty, you might be able to not only ascertain substrate, which I think you know about, you might, and this is a good reason to do this, you might cut right through the substrate and realize Rikpa. Pristine awareness, Buddha mind, big deal. And so yeah, this is relatively coarse, but dreaming is subtler, more powerful. Deep sleep is more powerful, more subtle. And you can meditate in all three. Outstanding question. And you're so young, you've got lots of time to do it. Start sooner than later. I have frequent headaches and modern healthcare doesn't serve me well. I'd like to try Tibetan approach. Could you please recommend a Tibetan doctor? There have to be some here in the UK, and some of you must know there has to be at least a good one in London. So Stuart, can you?
Yep, there's a doctor who holds a clinic at Samyazon in Bermondsey.
Fantastic. My primary physician is a Tibetan doctor living in LA, and she's the one I rely on more than anybody else. And they can be good. They can be really good, but it takes time. Western medicine tends to work really quickly. You take Ambien, boom, you're out within an hour. Take Tibetan medicine, boom, you'll find help in about a month. Or sometimes quicker, but it tends to be slow. Having said that, I had a bit of allergy yesterday, and my Tibetan doctor gave me an allergy pill. I took it, allergy gone. So it's really quite remarkable in many areas. And some areas it doesn't work. Could you please give us again the name of the French phenomenologist you met? Michel Bitbol. Michel Bitbol. B-I-T-B-O-L. He is outstanding, and he's published a lot in English. He's just really, truly a wonderful man, and so thoughtful. And when we were in Strasbourg a few years ago, he was there. His Holiness was giving some wonderful teachings. And then Michel, was it there? Yeah. There was a little one-day meeting of Buddhism and science, and Michel was asked to speak. He gave a brilliant talk, crunching materialism, just crashing it, and then showing the parallels between phenomenology, Heidrich and Husserl, and Madhyamaka. And the Dalai Lama said, I want you to come to India. I want you to come and talk to the Tibetans. And he said, yes, sir. Because he hadn't been invited. Because he challenges materialism, and that's not the most welcome thing for many scientists. He's really outstanding, and he's really open, and he's really interested in Buddhism. And he does speak with a French accent. Michel Bitbol, he's a lovely man. He's on our scientific board for the center we're creating in Tuscany. Could you explain space-time again, as I don't really understand what you meant by it. I promise not to. It bends. And if a particle travels through bent space-time, it curves. And it's totally weird, and it's really difficult to understand. Given that actions and dreams are precipitated by motivation, they must generate karma. That's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. That if you have a really malevolent thought in a dream, and you try to kill somebody, well, nobody's killed, but still, the motivation was there. And so that question came up. when we had 1 week of just 30 people listening to Yang Rinpoche, tremendous Dzogchen master, he died 3 years ago. And that question came up, do you accumulate karma by negative motivation or positive motivation? In an ordinary law and lucid dream, he said no. He said, no, you don't. And I listened, I translated for him, but I wasn't persuaded. So I thought, motivation, motivation. And then I read the Vinaya where the Buddha is saying, the Buddha himself is saying, you don't accrue any karma in a dream. So that's the answer. And I think the reason for it is the one I just gave. You're delusional. How much karma do you think a person accumulates when they're in full-blown schizophrenia? They're not making any real choices. The delusion, the sickness is making all the choices. And when you don't know what's going on and you're getting everything wrong, and you're not lucid, so you're just swept by your past habits, then I understand. I mean, this is Buddha himself and Yang Rinpoche, a great Dzogchen master. They're both saying no. So I understand, I sympathize with that, and it turns out to be wrong. I think the Buddha knows what he's talking about, and Yang Rinpoche was a superb master. So I think that's the reason. When you invoke a certain deity and see it and feel it, is it a fabrication of my mind? Probably. If you don't understand emptiness, and you're just visualizing, it's a free creation of your own mind. That's it. Having said that, it probably sounded like I was ridiculing it. But no. And that is, if you have faith, for example, faith in Buddha, faith in Padmasambhava, Tara, whoever, and you generate an image. The image is a creation of your mind. After all, it is. But you're not praying to an image. Nobody's that stupid, right? That's silly. I'm going to visualize Bugs Bunny and ask him for blessings. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So you're not praying to a visualization. It is a fabrication of your mind, but by way of the visualization, you're attending to the actual object of refuge. The Buddha, Tara, Manjushri. And can you receive blessings there? Yeah. But if you don't have understanding of emptiness, if you generate yourself as Manjushri or Tara, does that make any sense? No. For the very simple reason is you're not Tara and you're not Manjushri. You haven't even questioned whether you really exist or not. And so, okay, I will read this later. It's quite long, but I will read it. More questions about quantum mechanics. I said I'd answer them, so as I understand it, quantum physics postulates a quantum wave field that only collapses into particles through the interaction of the consciousness of the observer. Does this contradict the metaphysical realism? It absolutely does, although, and I want to be very honest and clear, do all quantum physicists believe that consciousness is necessary to collapse a wave function? Not all of them do, and many of them do. But if you'd like to see some of the most innovative thinking taking place in this field, who's highly respected by his peers, not just one thing I like, Christopher Fuchs, F-U-C-H-S, bright as a pin, and he's bringing consciousness explicitly into quantum mechanics in a brilliant way that's really creating some waves in his field. He's really outstanding. So you might check him out. But yes, quantum mechanics just generally demolishes not only materialism, but metaphysical realism. It just demolishes it. There's no survivors. Because prior to making a measurement, it's only possibilities, probabilities. But no inherently existent elementary particles out there just waiting to be measured. So then, bye-bye metaphysical realism. Do photons and prana have any connection? No, they don't. Prana, as we're understanding, exerts in living beings, and it's associated with consciousness. Photons are just little packets of energy, traveling in the speed of light. So no real connection. Does it make any sense to talk about a world system as real before a consciousness exists to perceive it? And if not, how come we talk about the age of the universe? That's a very interesting question, and fascinating responses can be given from quantum cosmology, but you can read about that in the notes, and I'll respond to it from Madhyamaka. Okay? But it's a very good question. So that's a good question, but that will come. That's tomorrow. How to live the illusion of I properly. Very practical. Very practical. Because the Buddha was saying, and really challenging the notion of I'm seeing it by way of. So by way of Victoria's voice, I apprehend her. But then by way of means if I go to London by way of Birmingham, a bit of a detour, yeah? But at least I get to London. But if I go to Victoria by way of her speech, where do I arrive? Who's the Victoria I encounter by way of her speech? By way of her body, her body's not her, and so by way of her. But who do I encounter? And that's what the Buddha is saying to Bahia. By way of? When you get there, what do you see? Do you see the nuclear Victoria just hanging out there, by which we can have these multiple avenues, by way of speech and so forth? By way of finding something that doesn't exist. A real Victoria that's there from our own side, that you access by way of this and that, there isn't any. So and now does that mean we don't exist? No, it never means that. But that too will come up tomorrow in Madhyamaka. Madhyamaka is the most brilliant presentation of how we do exist. Because in the Theravada, the Pali Canon, it shows many, many times how we don't exist. But then you ask, how do we exist? And if they say you don't exist at all, throw them out. They don't know what they're talking about. But then there's not much in the Pali Canon. How do we exist? Okay, I'm not my skandhas. I don't exist apart from my skandhas. How do I exist? Not much there, but the person who answers that better than anybody else I've ever seen is Nagarjuna, Tsongkhapa, Prasangika. Brilliant. I'll give the short answer now. I do exist. I'm here, I'm talking. How do I exist? All through a network of interrelationships. Relative to you, not right now, I'm arising as a teacher, but as soon as I step out the door, a teacher's not leaving the room. I'm not teaching anybody when I leave the room. So I stop. And I'm a customer when I'm in an airplane. I'm a passenger in an airplane. I'm arising as a grandpa towards one person in the world. But I'm not inherently anything at all. Not a grandpa, not a lama, not a teacher. I'm not even inherently a human being. So I am relative to, I'm many, many things. But independent of all the relationships, nothing to be found. Hallelujah. Covered that one already. I don't know how it got back in. Oh, I hope I didn't do this backwards, because that one I've seen. How do I live properly? Live as an illusion. Live yourself as someone who has no nucleus, and it's all relations. That's how you're an illusion. But we'll come back to that a bit. Is the body an extension of the brain? No, it's more like the container. I mean, you got a skull around it. So not really. No, I don't know anybody would say the body is an extension of the brain. If memories are stored in the substrate consciousness, why do so many people become conscious aware when their body functions fail? This is open to open up the inner world. Yeah, this is a lot of, the most interesting research there is in near-death experiences, where the brain is shutting down and people have some of the most vivid experiences they've ever had. So that is interesting, a very fertile area for scientific research, but the contemplatives have got this covered. And that is when your mind shuts down, then you go into subtle mind, because of course mind is no longer operating because it rises independence upon the brain. So one of the most compelling cases of a woman who actually did have a veridical out-of-body experience took place in Arizona years ago. There was a whole National Geographic 20-minute documentary on it, so it's really not flaky New Age stuff. And I've read it, and she said years afterwards, she died now, but she said years afterwards, the experience I had out of body and viewing the operating room and the people in it and what they're doing, that was such an intensely vivid experience, I can remember it as if it was yesterday. That's what she said. And when she reported right after the operation, she had a 6-hour operation on her brain, when they basically killed her for several hours. And when she obviously survived the operation. And then when her doctor came in, the primary physician, there was like 9 physicians, it was an enormous staff, very complicated surgery to remove an aneurysm deep inside her brain. And then she told her physician, I heard him, he was interviewed, and she told her physician, while my brain was dead, I observed people in the operating room and I heard them say this and I saw them say that. And he came away and said, she knew things she had no way of knowing. That was it. She knew things she had no way of knowing, and she did. But I asked, there's a fellow, Bruce Grayson, University of Virginia, who spent decades studying this, especially out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. And I said, how do you explain this? That a person whose brain isn't working, which means visual cortex, none of that's working, it's all flatlined, and they're seeing colors of the clothing and so forth of the people in the operating room, and they're hearing what they say. It's rare, but it does happen. If it happens once, it happens. And how do you explain that? That they're hearing things, but their ears don't work. And how do you explain that? He said, I don't know. He just said, I appreciate that. So, to be researched. But it's very weird, very mysterious. If you should say consciousness is neither created nor destroyed, but conserved and transmuted much like matter and energy, then what from did consciousness take prior to evolution of sentient beings on Earth? Good question. Other world systems. They didn't crop up fresh. But this is in Buddhism, that's not a fresh question. I mean, this has been dealt with by the Buddha himself. There are multiple systems, world systems, and they're all arising and passing out of sequence. So sooner or later, whether or not we destroy our planet, sooner or later our sun's going to go, it's going to burn up everything here. It's some billions of years away, so you can still buy property, it'll be okay. But sooner or later, I mean, this planet has a lifespan. It wasn't here 5 billion years ago, and it's not going to be here, I think, 9 billion years ago, something, from now. So all of them are transient. But when a planet forms that is habitable, then sentient beings migrate from another world system that's going kaput. So one house is collapsing, they move to another one. This one collapses, they move to another one. If it's not collapsing, they'll probably reincarnate right there. This is true also among the Inuit. Up in what I heard a PhD, Harvard PhD trained anthropologist, I think at the University of British Columbia, heard her speak. And she's done lots of research on Inuit way up there above the Arctic Circle in British Columbia. And belief in reincarnation is just absolutely common among all of them. And they're Eskimos or Inuit, and they're not meditators. It's cold up there, They don't meditate. But they all believe in reincarnation. Everybody does. And the reason is, they say, because she's interviewed them, they all believe in reincarnation. But not because of their shamanic beliefs or something, because just time and time again, grandpa dies, takes birth as his grandchild, and turns to his mother and said, "Hi, daughter," and starts talking about when he was her dad, or whatever, grandpa. And it's happened, and they come out with so many true statements. And it's all within the family. They're born right back into the same clan as a nephew or a granddaughter or whatever, really commonly. And so common that they have no choice but to say, well, Grandpa came back again, And Auntie, she came back as a nephew again. Yeah, she remembered everything. I remember, yeah, okay, like that. And so you wonder, why are they doing that? Why don't the Inuit reborn in Tahiti? Wouldn't you like a change of pace? Really? It's cold up there. I think, so that's a question, and all I have is a speculation, but I really enjoy making it. All your friends are up there. You don't know anybody in Tahiti. So it's warm there, but all your friends are here. So you come back to family. And that's what they've been doing for centuries. They come back to family. Then oh, Grandpa, good to see you again. Oh, good to see you too. It's all in the family. Because they're so remote for everybody else that they don't know anybody else, the traditional Inuit. Whereas we people, we're traveling all over the place. So we could take birth anywhere. So nothing comes from nothing. Doesn't this mean that the Big Bang Theory is complete nonsense? I always hesitate to say that, but what they do know is what happened actually at the Big Bang and what preceded it, no knowledge whatsoever. What caused it, they have no idea. And so it's an incomplete theory, and they all acknowledge that. And I studied that when I was at Amherst and did the mathematics. And when you get to the singularity, t equals 0, all bets are off. Nothing makes any sense. All the mathematics just blows up. So it's not complete nonsense, but it has no explanatory power for consciousness or life, and no explanatory power to explain what triggered it. And what about the expanding universe? Actually, the Buddha in the Pali Canon, I've seen this, he speaks of universes, world systems expanding over billions of years, and then expanding until they don't expand, and then they contract back, and they disappear into space, into the form realm. And then there's a breaking of symmetry, and another cycle begins, and then contract, and this takes billions of years, expansion and contraction. That's straight Buddhism. Expansion, contraction over billions of years. When everything contracts, then life is no longer possible in that world. They all pop over to another one that's just getting ripe. And they're all out of sequence. So there's no universe. In the Buddhist worldview, there's never been a universe. Because the notion of a universe comes from one God creating one universe and populating it. There is no notion of one God creating anything in Buddhism. And so there are myriad worlds created by the sentient beings who inhabit them, and they're out of sync. So there's always a place to go. When your apartment building collapses, there's another one that's just finished. And they all migrate over. Yeah. So everything hinges on this. I'm sure this sounds like religion or maybe hocus pocus or sheer speculation. And I understand that. I don't expect people to believe it because I'm saying it or even because the Buddha said it. I mean, he never asked for that. But everything hinges on this one thing. Actually, there's two approaches. I know people that I really respect, and they say, I believe in karma, and because I believe in karma, I believe there must be a continuity of consciousness from lifetime to lifetime. I say, why do you believe in karma then? I mean, why did that come first? And they say, and these people I really respect, it's my moral consciousness. My feeling about the universe is that morality is not just make-believe. It must be in the nature of the universe. And if people do horrible things, really horrible things, and other people do wonderful things, there should be consequences. There should be consequences. And not just everybody gets a free ride into oblivion, or everybody gets a free ride to salvation. There should be consequences. There must be consequences. When we watch a movie, the audience satisfaction is, did it have a good ending, or do I feel really unsatisfied with the ending? You know? And I've seen some movies where I said, I wish I hadn't seen that. That was crap. The ending was so unsatisfying. Why do you even make that movie? It's crap. It's not that the good guys will always win, but have a meaningful ending. And so that's one, I understand that. That if you're really profoundly moral at your core, then you must believe the universe one way or another, with a God that does it, or karma, what have you. But the world must be moral. And Buddhist ethics is, if you live in accordance with reality, you accrue good karma and that turns out well. And if you live out of accordance with reality, you accrue negative karma and that turns out badly. There is in fact a moral fabric to the universe. And virtue is living in accordance with reality, and non-virtue is contrary to reality. So that kind of makes sense. But that was not my approach. I looked at it just purely, what happens? Where's the evidence? And to my mind, the evidence is overwhelming for the continuity of consciousness. And if that's true, consciousness doesn't begin when the brain is created, and it doesn't end at brain death. If that's true, no identifiable beginning, no identifiable end, conservation principle. And there's re-embodiment. Then there's just two choices, basically. If we're going to be re-embodied, there are two choices. Either it's law-like and it's meaningful, or it's completely chaotic. So you live like a saint and you go to hell. You live like a mass murderer and you wind up the child of loving parents in Beverly Hills. Just helter-skelter. So that's a possibility. No meaning at all. You're just thrown this way and that way, and whatever you do, it doesn't make any difference because it's just like that. It's a possibility I find profoundly unsatisfying. But something's true. If consciousness continues from lifetime to lifetime, either it's meaningful or it's not. And if it's meaningful, it's got to be ethical. That's my sense of it. So I have very, very great confidence in karma. But the only one that I know who really knows it deeply is the Buddha. You have to be a Buddha to thoroughly comprehend karma. You can be anybody and access, with good discipline, and access the substrate consciousness and access previous memories. You don't have to be a Buddhist or a Christian or religious. It's just technology. Look and you'll see. But karma is, the Buddha said, that's the most complex thing I'm sharing with you. Karma is the most complex, most difficult to understand. Emptiness, much easier. So that's that. About death. According to Buddhist conception, how does medication that alters consciousness and palliative sedation affect the moment of death and subsequent bardo? Practical question, happy to respond. It's not a catastrophe. A friend of mine, I won't go into anecdotes. It's not a catastrophe if you're so sedated, perhaps because you're dying of bone cancer, which a friend of mine did. In bone cancer, you're just dying with excruciating pain, excruciating, mind-numbing, overwhelming pain. Your whole world is just pain. If you have no anesthesia, no morphine, there's nothing on your mind but pain. It's anguish and screaming until you die. So I will tell the story because it's extremely short. A friend of mine died of that, and he had the morphine drip and he's a Buddhist. And he'd take just enough morphine that the pain was bearable. It's never fine, but it's bearable, just bearable, and maintaining clarity of consciousness. So he could continue practicing, doing his practice, and the pain would get, and he'd increase, but he had his finger alone was on the morphine drip. And he wanted to remain clear, but he didn't want to be screaming. So, but if, for whatever reason, you die in a motorcycle accident and your brain, you're out, you're comatose, you're vegetative, or you're taking drugs that just, so sedate you that all clarity is gone, and you can't practice meditation, and you just basically slip into oblivion. It's not a catastrophe. It's not a catastrophe. It's not, oh, terrible. It just means you can't use it. You can't use it. Your mind's not up to it. But if you've lived a virtuous life, and you've accumulated merit, lived a virtuous life, and you dedicated the virtues repeatedly, then even if it's really blackout when you die, that karma and your prayers of dedication will carry you through. It can be all good. It can all be good. Preferable to die without much pain or no pain and lucidly, preferable. But everybody won't have that chance. You could die very suddenly, automobile crash, boom, you're dead. So you can't do that lucidly. When the Dalai Lama took general anesthesia to have his gallbladder removed, he wanted to see if he could practice meditation. When he got general, it was, that's what he said. It just bludgeoned him into oblivion. I couldn't do it. The drug just took over and I was out like a light, and then I came back. But he was totally out, no practice at all. But as soon as he was up again, then he was practicing, that's what he does. And he commented that the doctors were astonished at his rate of recovery. He was not a young man, it was a major surgery. And they saw how quickly he rebounded, and they were amazed. So that's where his dharma kicked in. But not when the anesthesia hit. There's Dalai Lama here and anesthesia there. Boom. But very temporary. Is enlightenment possible only by being on retreats for decades, or is it possible also for lay people who engage in shorter, regular retreats? Is it possible? Well, the short answer is, of course, it's possible. Definitely possible. Will you achieve enlightenment in this lifetime? Well, let's put it this way. Let's imagine you get really curious about to be a brain surgeon. You're kind of really interested in brain surgery. And you go off occasionally for a weekend seminar on brain surgery. How many retreats do you think you'll need before you get licensed as a brain surgeon to say, bring your brain, I want to practice? You'll never become a brain surgeon. Not with a bunch of week-long retreats and maybe doing an hour of reading brain texts or twiggling with brains of frogs. You'll never be a brain surgeon, not in this lifetime, maybe in the future lifetime. And what's more difficult, becoming enlightened or brain surgeon? So this lifetime, no. This life, not likely, really extremely not likely. I never want to raise false hopes. But if you live a meaningful life, really a meaningful life, a virtuous life, you're practicing a very balanced and rich and full Dharma practice. Not just doing one practice like shamatha or this or poa or dzogchen. Really developing a whole way of life. As Domdumba said, give up all attachment to this life, let your mind become Dharma. You devote yourself to Dharma. And you have children, you have a job, maybe taking care of parents. You're a philanthropist, maybe give some of your excess money away and live a virtuous life. And you dedicate your merits, then I can tell you with a lot of confidence, nobody has to believe anything I say, of course, anything. But if you have the faith in living such a virtuous life, doing your best to cultivate bodhicitta, doing your best to follow the Bodhisattva way of life, but only maybe an hour or two of meditation every day, living a virtuous life, meaningful life, then you have every chance of going to Sukhavati, Pure Land. If you go to Pure Land, you're going to be enlightened very quickly. All worries over. You get to one Pure Land, you're safe. You're safe forever. You may stay there a long time, achieve enlightenment there. You may stay there for a while and then go someplace else. But once you've been to a Pure Land, you won't leave without bodhicitta. If you haven't developed fully bodhicitta yet, you'll develop it in a Pure Land. Sukhavati is the best, most viable option. Go to Sukhavati and you're set. You're really set. And it's not just go up there and play a harp forever and be happy. And nobody believes that, not Christians or anybody else. But it's nothing silly, and it's not just to hang out with the Buddhas and really enjoy it. It's to go into an environment that's created by the mind of a Buddha so you can practice in an optimal environment. The best of all retreat centers is a Pure Land. And you have the best of all teachers, not only Amitabha, but you'll probably bump into Atisha. Check him out. Send him my regards if you get there first. I mean, spectacular teachers. And so you can receive teachings from those spectacular teachers who've ever lived, and Amitabha, Buddha, and practice and practice. And then when the spirit moves you, you may feel, maybe I can come back to earth and really do some good. Maybe I'll go to Shambhala and do some good. Maybe I'll go someplace else. Right? There's one story I like a lot, though. It was a Tibetan, really very accomplished Tibetan yogi in Dzogchenpa, Nyingmapa. Really profound realization. And he was about to die, and he spoke with his Lama. And his Lama asked him, okay, you've done really well in this life, you really have some realization. Where do you plan to go? Where are you going? And he said, I'm going to go to the Pure Land of Padmasambhava, the glorious copper-colored mountain. That's what I plan to do. And the Lama said, his Lama said, don't bother. Padmasambhava is going to send you right back. You're so accomplished, you could really do some good. So go out and greet Padmasambhava, make an offering, give him a kata. He's going to send you right back again. You know? So the notion of Pure Land is not an end in itself. It's a place to bring about profound transformation and then come back with much better preparation. That's why it's for. How can I experientially distinguish between hypnagogic movie and a lucid dream movie? Very good, very practical. Hypnagogic. Here's hypnagogic and hypnopubic, but most people know about hypnagogic. And I think many of you have experienced it. So many of you have had lucid dreams. But it's when you're falling asleep and you're not dreaming yet. You may still be a bit aware of your body or marginally, peripherally aware of your environment, but you're really on a slide and you're going right towards really falling asleep, but not really engaged in the waking and haven't yet gotten into dreaming. And this happens frequently, but we don't always notice. You'll pass through a phase of hypnagogic imagery, in which the imagery that comes up, and it's not just visual, it can have an audio track, it can have a tactile track, but you'll enter into this virtual reality, and it's not dreaming because it has no story. Dreams generally have a story. But hypnagogic imagery tends to be video clips with no story, but incredibly realistic, high definition. And they're transient, but better than anything you can visualize in the waking state. And the reason for that is your awareness has pretty much been siphoned away from the five sense fields, so it's not diffuse, it's all focused in the mental. Haven't gone into dream yet, but that means all that light going into imagery in the mental domain, very high definition. That's hypnagogic. That one's easy. Om. Any question on that one? I'll read it again. How can one explain premonitory dreams, like for example dreams of a student being directed to a specific teacher, or premonitory dream of a mother seeing her future daughter clearly in a dream? I've seen so much evidence, I do believe they occur. Not everybody does, but I do. A physicist that I know has done about 20 years of research on precognition and remote viewing. Has come up with a lot of evidence that I find very compelling. So whether in a dream or other cases, but not infrequently in dreams, and where they generally happen for people who are not yet yogis and achieve high states of realization and so forth, it does happen to other people. And it generally happens where there's a very strong karmic bond, a very strong relationship. Mother-child is classic. That a mother may have a premonitory dream about her child, a child about the mother. So very often parent-child. That the karmic connection is so strong that something happens way over there, and there's like resonant vibrating strings like that. It's just a metaphor. But there's something resonates, and you may really have a strong sense of something that's occurring far away right now, or something that will happen. Not at all uncommon. And so I do believe it takes place. And so that's what makes the connection, is the karmic connection. But then how is it possible, especially if it's precognitive? That is, if you're seeing something remotely, that's already very mysterious, but it's the entanglement of the substrate of the person over there and the substrate here. They're not isolated. They're distinct, but they're not independent. And then when there's strong karmic connection, they're entangled. Like those two photons, it's again an analogy, but the two photons, they're totally different photons. But they came from the same source, almost like had the same DNA. When something here happens there. But precognition, I'm persuaded it does happen. The Buddha prophesied many things, including the coming of Maitreya and so forth. And my understanding of that is that you're tapping into, maybe with just totally clear vision, or maybe you're not that highly realized. And then I'll use an analogy of a wormhole. You're here, and then you slip into a wormhole and you access some other place. It comes from general relativity theory. It hasn't been proven yet, but it's good theory. That you're punching a wormhole into the future and getting like a little groundhog popping its head up, looking around, and then coming back where it is. And how this is possible, to make it intelligible, and not just magic or supernatural, which doesn't explain anything, is if you consider that you may be able to tap into Rigpa. And Rigpa is atemporal. It's not in past, present, or future, but it pervades all three. It's in the fourth time. And if you tap into Rigpa, tap into this realm that is trans-temporal, and then you have your target, you may pop up in the future and get a peek of something in the future, and then come right back to the present. Tap into Rigpa, you're tapping into an atemporal, which means pervades all three times. That's a big topic, a very fascinating one, but that's it for now. Is there a rule that you shouldn't talk about the contents of your meditation? If so, will it not inhibit contemplative science research? That's also a very good practical question. And so, it's not a rule, but it is an unspoken rule, which is not an invariable rule, it's not an absolute rule. Never speak about your realization. His Holiness has on occasion. Rarely, but he does on occasion. If you watch Yogis of Tibet, there was a very accomplished yogi, there shouldn't be no doubt about it. Dupan Rinpoche was a real deal. He was highly respected by His Holiness and his peers. Top level, he looked into the camera and said, I can remember all my past lives. So occasionally it does happen. And he didn't break a rule, but he's so far beyond any concern of, oh, look at me, I'm famous, I'm something. He's so far beyond that, he can say anything he likes. There's not going to be no ego there. He's just beyond that. So that does happen. Milarepa spoke about his enlightenment, and others have it, but it is rare, and most will just keep quiet, and for very good reason. And so then we want to create this center in Tuscany, with the full blessing of His Holiness. He wrote a marvelous endorsement, and Gyatro Rinpoche said, thumbs up, good. And Khandala, oh my goodness, she was really encouraging, really super encouraging. And I have only reverence for they're all my lamas. And so we're not kind of going off shooting from the hip or some California doing his trip guy. It's doing something really with the full knowledge of my lamas and support of some outstanding scientists. But there's the question, if people start achieving shamatha, if they don't, then why are we bothering? Because it's shamatha, vipassana, and then dzogchen. We're going to go as far as we can. Until people achieve rainbow body, we're going to keep on plugging. I want to see people in the modern world achieve rainbow body. It shouldn't just be stories. Then we'll get further and further in stories that are going to look more and more like mumbo jumbo. Grandpa said, great-grandpa said, yeah, whatever. Nobody will believe you anymore. But if it keeps on happening, then it's evidence. So what to do? And I've given this a lot of thought because I take it very seriously. And here's my strategy. When somebody achieves shamatha, number one, the scientists will be monitoring all the way, but we will have them sign a contract that will be, Darth Vader is going to come and get you if you break the contract. And that is when they're studying, I'm going to send him personally. As you're studying, collaborating with these meditators who are going deeper, 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 you will keep confidential the identity of every meditator. You will never ever tell any name. It's going to be meditator A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, whatever you like. You'll never divulge the identity of any yogi that we're allowing you to study with or collaborate with, ever. And I will not divulge. That's my vow. I'm not going to tell anybody. It's a private business. They're private business, whatever they achieve or don't. Private business. I'm there to serve in their practice, help them in practice, but not blab about their practice. It's totally private. But then imagine we have 3 or 4 people who achieve shamatha and they start doing this, this research to see if they can recall past lives. Yeah, absolutely. It'll be among the 18 people, Mary, Joe, and Jack. Pseudonyms achieved it, and we ran these experiments. It'll be pseudonyms all the way through. And nobody's going to know. who they are, except for the people that do it. And if they want to blab, that's their business. I'm not here as a policeman, you can't talk. But the whole Tibetan tradition, going way, way back, says, don't blab, keep it quiet. If you start talking to others about your experience, unless it's really pure motivation and you see it's going to be definitely helpful, it only creates obstacles in your own practice. So why do that? So I will encourage them to keep silent, but I'm not a policeman. If they want to talk about the realization, okay? But I will keep it silent. But the word will get out, because in various studies, scientists know this better than I, you keep the name of the person anonymous. And including in tragic cases, if studies are done of women who have been raped, do you ever think they ever tell their name? Never. Private business. But you can still publish studies about what happens with rape victims and so forth. So this is not tragic, but it is private. And that's how we'll do it, anonymous. So, I'm not clear about, okay, this is exactly the kind of question I welcome, and this is straight Buddhism. I'm not clear about the difference between space of mind and awareness of awareness. Oh, okay. Awareness of awareness, you're just focusing just on the subjective aspect, the sheer luminosity, the sheer cognizance of awareness itself. You're not looking at space. Just the experience of being aware. The space of awareness is the space in which appearances arise. And it's vast, and it's images, and it's thoughts, and all kinds of stuff coming up. But the practice we'll do tomorrow, today, and but of yesterday, I think, we're resting in awareness, but we were aware of the space, aware of the thoughts, the subjective, space itself, and we're also aware of awareness. But tomorrow we're gonna trim this off, go down to the bare nucleus, which will be the direct preparation for dying lucidly. And also, before you die, really ascertaining the nature of consciousness from a first-person perspective, you'll nail it. There'll be no mystery about consciousness at all. There's nothing intrinsically mysterious about consciousness. It's mysterious only because people aren't looking at it and they're just thinking about it. Well, everything's mysterious if you don't look at it and just think about it. Tomatoes. If you never look up a tomato, I've heard about tomatoes, I've never seen one, but some people say you don't know what you're talking about because you never look at a tomato. It really is that simple. So look at it and you'll fathom the nature of consciousness. Tap into it, you'll penetrate right to the substrate consciousness. Tap into there, according to Atisha, tap into the substrate consciousness, achieve shamatha. Number one, past life recall, Yang Rinpoche guaranteed it. Definitely you can do that. But Atisha, the great Atisha says, achieve shamatha, and with relatively little ease, you'll be able to display various types of cities. So, knowing other people's minds, remote viewing, other cities, he said, achieve shamatha. These can come quite easily. And there's a case of that. Remarkable woman. She was one of those. She was Indian, lived in Burma. Deepa Ma. She was Indian, I'm quite sure. Lived in Calcutta, but she trained in Burma under Munindra and Mahasi Sayadaw. She had 2 kids. She had a very happy marriage. Her husband died. She had 2 daughters. One of them was called Deepa, so she was called Deepa's mom, Deepa Ma. Amazing woman. There's a biography of her. Amazing. I think it's chapter 13 tells about her siddhis. Because she achieved shamatha and beyond. No question about it. I don't doubt it for a second. I'm very skeptical. There's so much false counterfeit account out there. I can't even count it. This woman, absolutely the real deal. And she displayed siddhis that were witnessed by multiple people. She appeared in 2 different places. She would fly on occasion. She would walk through walls, I think. And she displayed this quite commonly, and multiple people saw them. And then years went by. She moved back from Burma, moved into a tiny little dingy flat in Calcutta. And during her later years, and one of the Western students, she had quite a following. She was a saint and a natural yogini, really brilliant. And one of the Western students asked her, "You haven't shown any siddhis for a while. Do you still have them?" Or she said, "Oh, I let them slip." I can almost quote verbatim. "I let them slip. They're not at my fingertips anymore." And so the Westerner said, "Well, how long would it take you to get them back?" And she said, "Oh, it'd be a lot of work. Probably 2 weeks." So some people are gifted. Boom, they're there. These just people, like can play piano with no training. They're brilliant in this, brilliant. It happens in different fields. Meditation is one of them. She was brilliant, amazing person. I wish I'd met her. Maybe the last one. Oh, okay, this is the same one. I start to do spacing the mind, but it seems to turn into awareness of awareness, or at least I'm aware of awareness while I watch my thoughts. I'm not getting far with either practice because I think I'm getting wrong. Can you advise? Yeah, that's a very good question, very practical. And so afflictive uncertainty is one of the 5 obscurations that veils the luminosity of substrate consciousness. And afflictive uncertainty really just, it tangles you all up. You can't go forward or backward because you're never quite sure, am I doing it right, doing it right? And so this is what we're here for. Well, I'll give guided meditations. We'll have time for clarifying in the evening. I'll do my very best. So we've pretty much covered taking the mind as the path. I hope it's clear. But tomorrow, then we're going to go right into one straight line. Beeline. Again, with no belief system involved at all. It's just shamatha, so it's not a Buddhist practice per se, although it's taught in Buddhism. Of a series, many of you know it already, from Padmasambhava, of just trying to ascertain one thing to achieve shamatha right in awareness itself. Not even attending to the space of the mind, taking no interest in thoughts, let alone anything else. Visual, tactile, auditory, and so forth. And so, if you're deliberately focusing on the space of the mind, you're not practicing shamatha without a sign. Shamatha without a sign means no object outside of awareness itself. If you're taking a real interest in thoughts, then you're not practicing shamatha without a sign. If you're not taking any interest in anything at all outside of your experience of being aware, and you're content with that. This is the difficult part, to be content, to be satisfied. Because we can do it right now. Let's do it for 5 seconds, no, 10 seconds. Let's just be aware of being aware without being interested in anything else. 10 seconds. I was doing it, and imagine you are. It's not that hard. And you can do it immediately. Faster than it takes the pin to drop, you can already be in. And it's really simple. It's just being aware, and not doing anything else. It's not hard to be aware of being aware. What's hard is not doing anything else. Because we're so habituated to it. And it's hard because we get bored. And it's hard because we think there must be more to it than this. And there isn't. You're just resting right there and being aware. And if you can continue doing that without distraction, without identifying with the activities of the mind, then here's my favorite analogy, and then we'll call it a night. But it's my favorite analogy. If you take a red-hot burning coal, first of all, make a cone of snow, like a snow, but a big one, like 3 feet high. A cone of snow at the top there. And then put a red-hot burning coal right on the top of the cone. You know what it's going to do, of course. It's going to melt right down to the ground. Probably melt all the way before it cools off. And it'll come right down to the ground. And it doesn't have to do anything. When the red-hot coal, it first rests on the top of the snow cone, it shouldn't think, but what do I do? What do I do? Don't do anything. Just hang in there. But what do I do now? Shut up. What do I do now? Am I progressing? Be quiet. And then it slips right down to the ground, which is the substrate consciousness. And you get there by not doing anything at all, but without falling asleep, without spacing out. So if you can maintain that flow of cognizance, clear and bright, discerning, sharp, and not do anything at all, you'll keep that coal burning, and it will burn until you get right down. It will burn right through your mind. All the strata of your mind will burn right down to the substrate. And when it's there, it'll come to rest. And then the substrate will illumine everything. The substrate consciousness will illuminate everything. So I've done this many, many hours. I have a bit of experience. It's learning when to stop questioning. Because you have the confidence. I know how to do it. I'm doing it. No more commentary needed. And I'm just going to do it. And you go in there. Keep it simple. Keep it clear and discerning. And it'll take you right there. It's the most direct path to realizing shamatha. So that's that. Okay. Next 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, is going to be Buddha Dharma the whole way. Okay, so we'll start practicing Buddhism. And you can check out the physics if you're interested. Are you content with that? I'm trying to be of service without just slipping into entertainment and doing what you want. I'm not going to I'm not going to sugarcoat the Tibetan medicine. Just take it straight. Is that okay? Okay. I'll do my best. And take you on this straight path and always have it relevant to, I never like to mislead people. We said dreaming of reality and sleeping, dreaming, dying. It's going to keep on relating to sleeping and keep on relating to dreaming and keep on relating to dying and the bardo. So we'll never veer very far from that. But what I could have done for this retreat, which would have been much, much easier, is just to go back to the book called Sleeping, Dreaming, and Dying in Tibetan Buddhism, for which I was one of the 2 interpreters in 1992. It was a wonderful meeting with His Holiness, with lucid dreaming and near-death and so forth. And I took a very active part in translating, co-translating for that. And it's a wonderful book. And I could have just taken a whole bunch of notes and then teach you a retreat on sleeping, dreaming, and dying in Tibetan Buddhism. But then you can read. So I should take notes on a book you can read. So I recommend it. It's a wonderful book. But no reason for me to treat you as if you can't read and then tell you what's in the book. So that's why I didn't do that. What you're finding here, what we've been doing, you're not going to find this in any book. The material we've covered in the first 3 days, I dare you, find a book that covers that material. And the material we'll cover in the next 3 days, I dare you. If there were a book, then I'd say read the book. But here we are, doing what we're doing. Hope it's helpful. That's my motivation. Good night.